what I have prepared is a brief presentation of what has happened during the first half of the year in Spain in terms of investment, where the capital came from, and so. Let's see firstly how is the macroeconomic context, because it is very interesting to know that we have reviewed 3 times from the beginning of the year to now the expectation on the GDP growth in Spain. IMF, the World Bank, the Central Bank of Spain, we have been reviewing our GDP growth, and actually now we expect to grow over 2% next year and the years later. So it is very important for us because the worst indicator we have in our economy is the unemployment rate, and we expect to decrease the unemployment to levels of 2007 in less than 9 years, which is a lot, but you have to take into account that we have reached levels of 26.2%. The best indicator we have now is the current balance. We are exporting more than we are importing, and this is very important for us because our national debt is almost 100% of our GDP, our annual GDP. But what is relevant is that Bloomberg has announced that Spain is growing more than the Central Bank of Spain was announcing at the beginning of the year. The unemployment rate is the lowest in the last 2 years currently. And moreover, we have established a new vehicles, very tax-efficient vehicles in Spain, very, very similar to the REITs. They are called SOCIMIs, you probably know that. And in the IPOs in the real estate industry that we have in Europe during this year, Spain is the #1 in fundraising capital to deploy in the real estate industry. 3 billion have been fundraised during the end of last year and the beginning of this year. And new 4 SOCIMIs are in the stock market, and are being very successful. They are very successful now. They have deployed almost 60% of the total they fundraise. So how was the investment market? Investors continue being very, very bullish with Spain. We are going to see that during the first half of this year, we have reached more than 3 billion. It is a lot comparing with the year before. Let's see what has happened. You can see here in the light green how is the total invested in the southern and peripheral economies in Europe, and in the darker green the Central and Eastern European economies. And as you can see, in the last 6 quarters, more of the capital has been focused in the southern European economies. But if we go through the southern European economies, it is almost the same what has happened. You can see the light green is representing Spain, and in the last 5 or 6 quarters, Spain has been much more active than Italy, for example, or Portugal. Portugal never was more active than Spain or Italy, but Italy used to be very, very active, more than Spain in 2009, 10 and 11. You can see here how is the change in the last 12 months before July. And Iberia, Portugal and Spain has increased 140% the total invested in the same period 1 year before. So it's growing and growing. You can see here the financial conditions of the market were not the best. At the end of last year and at the beginning of this year, Ireland, for example, you could get a higher loan to value and a higher maximum loan in an asset. This is for prime, for really prime assets. But anyways, we have been doubling. This year we more than doubled the total invested in the first half of last year. And last year was the double on the year before. So we are growing in terms of doubling and doubling each year. But the most interesting thing is that we are growing in all the segments, in all the sectors. Here you cannot see very well because the only one that is not growing in the first half of this year is industrial logistics. But this is because we had a lot of deals that has been delaying to close the negotiations, and we have had 4 portfolios that were sold during July and August. Probably we will see later during the discussion panel. These are the SOCIMIs that are now in the stock market in Spain. The first 3, Entrecampos, Promorent, and Mercal SOCIMIs, are very small, and in reality these SOCIMIs are a change of the vehicle that were holding the assets. But the other 4, Hispania, LAR, Merlin, and AXA Real Estate, they have been established very recently, and they fundraise all the capital outside. They have received a lot of interest from different very relevant and renowned investors like George Soros, PIMCO. They are participating in these vehicles, and they are quite active purchasing properties in Spain. They have deployed more than 60% of the total they fundraised at the beginning of the year. These other 3, Quabit, Norfim, and Fidere, are going to be established very, very short. Fidere is a vehicle that is going to be issued by Blackstone, and they probably will transfer some of the assets they purchased last year and at the beginning of this year to this new vehicle, which is really tax efficient. In addition, we have these 2 FABs. The FABs are another completely different vehicles, are some funds that are participated in a portion by the bad bank in Spain, the SRE. Okay? And they have really good conditions as well in terms of fiscal policy. Where the capital is coming from? Well, this year we have received a lot of capital from Asia Pacific, and this was for the very first time in the last 7 years. Chinese investors, they have a very opportunistic approach, but they are very, very focused in taking positions in Spain. Latin American investors are also very, very active. Mexicans are the most active, I would say. From Europe, we have received capital, but this is as usual. The share is almost the same each year. But as you can see here, this is the historical total invested in Spain, and you can see that it's like a perfect binomial. And in 2013, we have like an inflection point in our binomial. We are like changing the cycle. And this year is the consolidation, because we have invested like, we have received capital like 3.2 billion in the first half, but currently we are in levels of 5.5 billion. So July and August were really, really active. And we have, currently, we are in levels of last year. So probably we are going to finish this year in levels of 2006. This represents how has been the yield compression. And as you can see, we have compressed at least 75 basic points in most part of these sectors, except for the industrial logistics that are now very stable, but they compressed 50 basic points at the beginning of the year. I would like to show you 5 really big transactions in the office market of Madrid. These are 5 transactions over 100 million, which is a lot. This is a big amount for big ticket for Madrid. You have here this transaction. It was a sale and leaseback, a long-term contract, the same as this one. It was a Vodafone headquarters, and this is the IBM headquarters in Madrid. They were sold, one of them to a family office, British family office, and the other one to a Mexican family office as well. This is a standard transaction. Actually, Castellana 200 is the headquarters of CBRE in Madrid, and we were the agents, the brokers that sold this property. This is another completely different deal. This is a building that is going to be completely refurbished. It has been purchased by a Chinese investor, Dalian Wanda. It's one of the biggest groups in China, as you probably know. And this owner is now on market. It's interesting that we had, in the first half of this year, we have 2 transactions in the Castellana axis. And this is not very common. This is not closed, but we are working on that. We have the mandate to sell this property. It's a really good tower in the Azca district in Madrid. But in Barcelona, we also had 3 transactions in levels of 100 million, which is a lot, again, for Barcelona. Here you have a sale and leaseback. It's not exactly a sale and leaseback, but it's a very long-term contract until 2060. It's a really long-term, very good property, brand new. It has like a couple of years or 3 years. And the other 2 buildings are very interesting because they have been purchased to change the use from offices to hotels. One of them is supposed to be the future Hyatt Hotel of Barcelona. It's the former Torre Bar. And the other one used to be the headquarters of Deutsche Bank in Barcelona, and probably is going to be the Four Seasons in Barcelona in the future. Another interesting transaction is the public disposal, the second public disposal of the regional government of Catalonia. The first one took place last year, levels of a yield, levels of 9%. This one has been closed in levels of 7%, roughly. And the other one was concentrated. It was 13 buildings concentrated in this part of Barcelona, very close to the CBD. And this one, the 13 buildings are very dislocated. It's in the city center as well, but not in the best locations. However, the yield was closed in levels of 7%, and the total amount that Zurich paid for that was 201 million. When AXA Real Estate paid last year 174 million for another portfolio very similar to this one. The shopping centers industry, we have had a lot of appetite to invest in shopping centers. It's amazing. It's growing and growing. You didn't see in the total figures because most part of these transactions took place during July and August. And I would like to highlight, for example, this one, because we have transacted 6 really relevant shopping centers, very renowned in the country. One of them is El Boulevard, the other one is Gran Via de Vigo. That this is, I would say, the biggest transaction that took place in the retail industry in Spain for the last 8 years. It has been transacted in levels of 260 million. It is called Marineda City. It is in the northwest of the country and has been purchased by one of the SOCIMIs I showed you before. Where are the opportunities? Well, the approach to the opportunistic and the distressed assets, many of different investors has purchased the real estate platforms of the banks. You can see here, probably you know that the financial sector in Spain has been reformed and it has been consolidated from roughly 40 financial institutions to roughly 10 financial institutions currently. You have here all the repossessions they have, and there is a really big window of opportunity to purchase this kind of properties and to add values with a really active management of that properties. Sareb is another interesting window of opportunity to take positions in the Spanish market from the opportunistic side. You have a lot of land, non-performing loans, many different portfolio of assets, commercial and residential. And in the first year and a half of life that has the bad bank, I think it's very successful that they were able to sell more than 7 portfolios with a value over 3 billion. So it's something to take into account when analyzing the country. Conclusions. Why to invest now in Spain? Because the Spanish cycle is very volatile. Main structural reforms are being implemented already. Well, the third one is not completely real. Banks are starting lending again, mainly some banks, some German banks, and also some domestic banks, like La Caixa, for example. Third one, rental levels adjusted heavily and have started growing very slightly, but they have started growing in Madrid very, very slightly. and in the case of Barcelona are in bottom, so it's the right time to access the office market, for example. And good quality stock is not oversupply. The stock, either in Madrid and Barcelona, is very obsolete. So there are many opportunities to make some redevelopments and refurbishments. So where is the opportunity? I think the opportunity is in really big ticket assets, like the Castellanas 77 I saw you before, deals over 100 million, in which international investors are much more competitive than the domestic demand. Good asset or location with capex requirements. Castellana 89 is very close to the other building I saw you. Is not currently in the market, but is going to be in the market very soon, and it's a very interesting property, really well located, with a high availability, but with very active management. You can improve very easily the value of this property. Public sector sale and leasebacks. Junta de Andalucía is trying to market a really big portfolio of 300 million euros. But many other regional governments will market some properties very soon. The regional government of Madrid and the City Hall of Madrid are making some auctions of some of the best assets they own in Madrid, and there are many opportunities to get one of these assets. NPLs, like the Amazona project, I don't know if you are aware about that, but it's a really big project that is now on market. These non-performing loans. Some of them are residential, some of them are commercial, mainly focused in the hotel industry. Good companies have leverage that go for sale and lease, but also supply segmentation is key to separate the good from the bad. And in this case, I would say in the offices, I would be focusing very good locations with vacancy. We have this kind of product now in Madrid, and demand is becoming stronger and stronger. So at some point, we will recover the rhythm we used to have like 7 years ago. Just to give you an example, in the peak of the bubble, we used to have a gross take-up of 900,000 square meters per year, and currently we are at levels of 400. So we have the opportunity to grow a lot in terms of take-up. Retail, in those regions with license granting moratorium, like Catalonia, where you don't have a lot of competitors. Logistic portfolios, Liz, we have closed the biggest portfolio in the logistics sector in the history in Spain. It was sold from Gran Europa to Blackstone. It was a 320,000 square meters portfolio. Never in the market we have the opportunity to purchase so big portfolio with so high quality in the main corridor, in the Henares corridor in Madrid. And finally, in the residential market, you have many different options. Also in the student housing and health sector, which are not very mature in the country, so you have many opportunities as well.